Thank you all very much. And good afternoon and welcome to the President's Distinguished Lecture Series. After a period of hiatus that felt like a long time, a lifetime almost, I am delighted that so many faculty, staff, students, alumni, friends, and special guests have joined us here today for a presentation by a distinguished alumnus, Michael Fabiano, on how innovation is changing the news industry. I was just having a brief conversation with Michael, and I told him that essentially in this lecture series that we began about a decade ago, the primary focus has always been on one thing, and trying to understand how science, technology, and innovation influences the world. And we've had talks on the role of technology and innovation on healthcare, on policymaking, on finance, on transportation, on the semiconductor industry. I do not believe we have had any conversation in any formal way on exploring the role innovation is playing on the news industry. But we are all great consumers of news on a daily basis. So we have some very interesting thoughts to share with you today. For the past decade, the President's Distinguished Lecture Series has created a platform for some of the most influential scientists, technologists, policymakers, and business leaders of our time to discuss topics ranging from science and technology policy, and national security to future energy systems and also cancer research. Past talks have included the director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, the former chairman of Intel, the director of research at Google, and a Nobel laureate who led the National Cancer Institute, among others. These talks have elucidated our knowledge of technological advancements that are shaping 21st century society. Today, for the 15th installment of the President's Distinguished Lecture Series, we are happy to welcome Mr. Michael Fabiano, head of the Americas business at the Associated Press, to share his insights on how innovation is changing the news industry. Stevens is very pleased to partner with the Associated Press in the AP's Campus Insights project, which brings faculty expertise to AP media partners worldwide, and a number of our faculty that have participated in this endeavor are actually with us today in the audience. Mr. Fabiano oversees multimedia content licensing, marketing, product, operations and creative partnerships at the Associated Press, leading a critical transformation of the 175-year-old enterprise. He previously served as Vice President of Business Development at NBC News, where he launched several businesses, including NBC Digital, NBC E-Commerce, NBC Latino, NBC Learn, and created new programming with the Daily Connection. He also served as a general manager for the Weather Channel and led the deployment of branded digital initiatives across NBC News, The Today Show, MSNBC, Hulu, Sci-Fi, iVillage, NBC local TV stations, Bravo, and Universal Pictures. I'm running out of breath. He also created strategic partnerships with Apple, Amazon, Google, and Sony. Mr. Fabiano previously held senior leadership roles at NBC Universal, Corporate Strategy, Cendant Financial, and Accenture. He holds an MBA from Columbia University and a Master of Liberal Arts in Journalism from Harvard University Extension School. Mike Fabiano is a proud Stevens alumnus, having earned a Bachelor of Engineering in Mechanical Engineering and a Bachelor of Arts in English and American Literature. He was also recently appointed to the board of the Harvard Alumni Association. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Fabiano to the podium.
Thank you, Nariman. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, President Fabiano, administration, faculty, and the Stevens Alumni Association, and all of you who have made time to come here this afternoon. I'm really excited to be here, but I suspect some of you are a bit confused about what on earth is a Stevens mechanical engineer doing at the Associated Press. Well, we'll talk about that. There was lots I could do to present on innovation, and I thought I would use the framework of what I've been doing at the AP and its history to talk about innovation. And also, please know that I am standing on the backs of so many people who've gone before me. It's a 176-year-old, actually, this year. And while I've spun up many of these projects, there are many people to thank. So I can't take all the credit. But hopefully, I've moved the needle a little bit in the media world through all the things I've worked on. Before I get started, I just want to congratulate the Stevens administration for how far this campus has come in 29 years since I graduated. It seems like yesterday, but it's truly an amazing transformation of the campus. We love what you've done with the place, and I just want to give a round of applause. This is my view. I commute to downtown every day. On the ferry, I always get to see the Stevens sign, and I'm really proud of that accomplishment and really proud of this building. The media industry and the news industry broadly has gone through a massive transformation, in case you weren't aware, over the last 10 to 15 years. Technology's been a big part of this. But it's been a massive collision, is what I call it. It's a collision of technology, business models, and creativity. You've got to be really comfortable with transformation and change to work in the media industry right now. It's constant. The things we're doing now will be different a year or 18 months from now. So you sort of got to be like an entrepreneur inside these companies and be thinking about what's coming next. But what's really happened for us as a society, in my view, is we've got this wonderful digital landscape, right? It's opened up, free speech around the world. But I think it is the greatest civic challenge of our time. The digital world has disrupted the media ecosystem, and in many ways, we all have the same opportunity. We can all participate. And what it's done is created a huge responsibility for us as a society. So it's a global problem that we have to solve for. Having a healthy information ecosystem with less disinformation, hate speech, polarization, this is an exceptional challenge, not just for the Associated Press, but for the planet, to think about how we engage in talking about all the issues from war to climate change to health. But before we get to all of this change, I want to give you some context about the AP. It's a little bit of a commercial for AP, but I think it just sets the table for you to understand the DNA of the company that I'm working for. I'm really proud to work for the AP. I mean, I tell people, I don't have to do this every day. I get to do this. I mean, it's amazing integration of technology and business and journalism. Everybody's really proud of the media content that we create. This is photojournalism. You may have seen this image of a dad saying goodbye in Ukraine to his wife and daughter. And photojournalism is about capturing emotion. We don't just take pictures. We really think about it. And we think about how we tell the story about what's going on around the world. This is a tough image. This picture was used around the world. I imagine many of you saw it. It was used everywhere. And it was taken when a maternity hospital in Mariupol was bombed. Part of what we do is about eyewitness journalism. You've got to be there. It doesn't happen over a Zoom call. And it's really about making sense of the world. It's about the human connection and, the emotion that is drawn out of this image. We think accurate news is essential to a civil society, and it starts with the firsthand reporting. Journalism has been about giving a voice to the voiceless, getting the first draft of history correct, and for the AP, and for what I've been doing, it's about getting the facts and data as accurately as we can. The mission of the AP is to inform the world, which is really the mission of most news organizations. We're really proud of this statistic. More than half the world's population sees content from us every single day. It's a little over 4 billion people from our math. This is an incredible responsibility for a company to realize that 4 billion people are going to see news content that you're generating. And we take it really seriously. The scale is massive for the Associated Press. We file over 1 million photos every year and more. We produce over 2 million stories each year. Many of those stories have on average 6 to 7 updates, so there's a massive pipe of information. We create over 100,000 videos per year, and this is growing at an exponential rate. We're the largest broadcaster in the world. We transmit 23,000 hours of live video to control rooms all over the world. And we're in over 100 countries. We've got 248 bureaus. So we've got a quite broad reach around the world. I have the privilege, and we have the privilege, of working with over 15,000 diverse media companies on a daily basis. And we think about this. We think about the content we're producing, the technology we're creating to deliver this content, and how it's going to get out to all of those places in a seamless way on a daily basis. The one thing that has kept the AP a bright light over the last few years in the midst of what's been going on in media is we're not owned by anybody. It's a not-for-profit New York corporation. Nobody owns the AP. There's no stock. There's no government funding. The board of directors aren't paid. It's a privilege to be on the AP board. It's a business model we might not create today, but it serves a deep purpose. And I'm just going to sum up this section with a video because I can't really articulate the type of people that work for the company without showing them to you. So if you just bear with me, there were many videos I could have chosen to give you a sense, but we just had our Oliver Gramling Awards, which are our annual awards, and pay particular attention to Meg Kennard, who received a Spirit Award. These are monetary awards that we give. She reported all this year through cancer, and you'll see all that. And Philip Crowther delivers the news in 6 languages and counting. I don't know how he does it, but he's incredible. And then you also get a sense of the personal safety issues if you just look at some of the journalists, removing their jackets and, reporting in tough areas of the world.
It was really important to document what is going on in Mariupol. We realized that we are surrounded, and we understood that that's why we are here, and we might continue to cover the siege of Mariupol and to tell the story from inside.
I think the biggest accomplishment for us as journalists and for Associated Press was the fact that we were the only journalists, the only international journalists in Mariupol, and the fact that we've been able to tell comprehensively and in full scale the story of the city and the story of the struggle of the people who were stranded there with us.
I covered practically every major terrorist attack, shooting rampage, plane crash, celebrity trial, the pandemic, the war in Ukraine, earning the Gramling. That sends an important message, a message about quality, about good writing, about accuracy, about clarity.
Basically, I'm keeping the house tidy and in order, assisting each and individual journalist and AP team to excel their best performance with no worry of the administrative works.
I cover the politics of the U.S. South, breaking political news, and the presidential nominating process. Doing the work that I do for AP has provided an outlet for me to exercise my brain in a way that's helped keep my mind off of the stressors and challenges of fighting cancer.
As moderator for Global Enterprise, the most rewarding thing for me is to mentor photographers, to work with them on stories, to make sure that their storytelling is fluid and as good as their skills.
So as a team, we provided continuous coverage of Russia's invasion of Ukraine from before it even began.
There's been a war with Russia. Kovo brandiło annuncio diplomatie puisse arrêter für Russland in die Ukraine.
We had the perfect opportunity to try and fuse the editorial side with the services side and to see if we could actually manage to have a on-demand, on-tap product to bring to our clients.
This really shows the power, the breadth, the depth of the AP report and the ability of the AP to go anywhere at any time and be live for our clients when they need it the most.
Throughout the time we were dealing with air raid sirens, sometimes there were explosions with gunfire, we didn't always have food, and somehow this became the most amazing professional experience I've ever had.
To me, earning a Grammy Award is a validation of the collective work that we do as a GMS team, and to be recognized by colleagues from the best news organization in the world. I have no words. Thank you.
Philip's amazing. I saw some chuckle. I mean, 6 languages, right? I mean, it's amazing what he does. Just give me a minute here. I'm going to talk about some of the foundational work of the AP. And the company has really been, it just had a long history of adjusting through technological innovation. And really behind the journalism, you see, 3 pivotal moments. There are others, but I chose these 3 because it really shows how we've adjusted and grown. But the thing you need to understand is the Associated Press has been, from the start, machinists, engineers, journalists collaborating together to solve problems, much in this Stevens fashion of problem solving, to deliver improvements to the world of journalism. The work is approached creatively, but we draw information and ideas from all sorts of sources, from all emerging technologies, and work with a lot of experts. Obviously, this little thing called the telegraph, this single technology would transform our society in less than a decade, and it was sort of the foundational, technology from the start of the AP. Next came the telegraph and the typewriters. And those machines would type automatically 60 words per minute. But think about the development and the patents on this technology. And if you can appreciate that this wire system and the teletypes delivered news at an exponentially accelerated rate. So this was a big change to the news industry. And I think that people don't realize, but at one point, to grow the business in 1875, AP essentially became a telecom company. We were leasing wires from Western Union, and it took over 20 years for the company to build this lease line network. And so the business starts to get really complex, and it really starts to show the intersection of engineering and journalism. And you can imagine all the new different types of jobs behind the scenes that this created. We even got a telegram one day from somebody named Thomas Edison. It's a proud accomplishment in our history when we were transmitting the 1916 World Series over the wire and every play. So we got this telegram from Thomas Edison, and he said the Associated Press must be wonderfully well organized to accomplish what was done in all these ball games. And the guy who was running the wire at that time was this guy called Kent Cooper. He was really the first person, maybe in the industry, to really think about data being transmitted over a wire and the fact that this would eventually turn into, other kinds of technology. Fast forward, the wire photo. This was 10 years of development between the Associated Press and AT&T engineers. This is really complicated. This was launched on New Year's Day, 1935. This is how images got into the newspaper. I mean, look at this thing. It's really complicated. And think about other new jobs that were created by introducing this really complicated technology. And then I'll fast forward to the digital camera. Again, Associated Press is collaborating with Kodak on one of the first digital cameras. And the storage of all of that content digitally early on was, a real challenge. I mean, we didn't have Amazon Web Services. We didn't have the cloud. More new business processes, more new skill sets. This was pretty neat. In 2019, we made broadcasting history by having the first ever underwater broadcast shot 600 feet below the ocean. This was transmitted to customers. We were really, really excited for this. I remember being really disappointed because I thought we were going to find some sort of big squid or fish at the bottom of the Indian Ocean. And all it was like what you see on the screen. So for me, I was thinking Jules Verne and something was going to come for us, but that was broadcasting history. All right, so let's get to the innovation. This is it. This is where we're at, folks. The telegraph, images, the internet. I don't know what we're going to call this in a few years, but this is my world right now. It's artificial intelligence. It's natural language processing, machine learning, automation, vision, robotics, business intelligence, NFTs, user-generated content, what's going on with the blockchain, how do we track our assets, the metaverse, Web 3.0. This is where we're at, and it's exciting, it's scary. So we're casting a wide net into the future of technology innovation and kind of run through what some of those things are that you might not be aware of. From a business perspective, the AP licenses content, and we essentially license software. I know we're a media business, but I was there about a week, and the CEO came to my office and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think this is a software company, and we need to rethink the scale of this business and the technology of this business." We got the editorial piece down. That's not the problem. But what's the problem is what's on the prior slide. We have developed an incredible software as a service platform, rich with APIs. You can plug it into anything. This needs to plug into 15,000 customers worldwide. It is not a trivial solution. It is a software business. And we want our software to have all of our content, and we have to rethink how we store that content, how we get access. Right now, it's all about having visuals, audio, digital bits and bytes, alerts, snippets, social posts, images. All of it has to go through AP standards every day, 24/7, crowdsourcing, serving up stories automatically that a newsroom who's using the service may not even be thinking about. All this requires automation. And if there's one thing engineers are good at, it's automation and thinking about business process and automation. And on the outside of it, we're a news gathering organization. You just saw the video. That's all the news gathering. All that news has to make it into some production workflow. It all needs to be tagged, meta-tagged. It needs to be trackable. And it wouldn't be so bad if we were just one small company. But the scale of what we're doing and thinking about the future of how all of these assets are going to make it on all these devices is a pretty daunting mission for us. The automation projects are nonstop. I mean, we're constantly thinking about what the next iteration is from an internal standpoint and how we capture the data and the information that we're creating on a daily basis. And then we think about how it gets out to our B2B customers and maybe even to the end consumer. on how they're going to use our content to very quickly tell a story. How are they going to optimize it for user behavior? How can it be localized? And are there any shortcuts to getting production done faster? This is a massive technology problem. I don't think I can articulate this enough, but the scale of what we're doing and delivering around the world is really enormous. Some automation examples that can help along with this process that we've been working on. And these are usual suspects, but when you apply this to a big data set, it gets really complicated. Audio to text transcriptions, text to text translation, automated lists, tagging. How about writing a story based on data? And the story writes itself and then gets a quality assurance by a journalist. How about sharing usable data sets? We were talking earlier today about our gun violence database that we created, where we created a massive database to track gun violence in America, and then we localized it. So we give all that information to all the media companies in the US, but then they can localize it by state. We can share data with the end consumer. There's no reason why we can't do it, but it's got to be accurate and it's got to be something that they want. We can also start to think about automation, and we were doing this. How do you serve up stories in a certain location? If you're in Houston, serve up those stories automatically, just because there's so much information out there, especially in our pipe. We have been doing a lot around natural language processing and generation, and this is one we're really proud of. If you're not familiar with natural language generation, it's about turning structured data, templated data, into a digestible written narrative. So we did this project, and we had a number of journalists writing earnings report. It's an easy, low-risk place for us to start earnings reports. And you really need to have clean data to do this properly, because you don't want to have an automated algorithm create a bunch of bad earnings reports. I mean, that would be terrible. But the case study here is our journalists were writing 300 earnings reports per quarter, and we're now generating 3,700 with almost a zero error rate. And the error rate was much higher, in the order of 15 to 18% when humans were doing it. So this is a good example of how we can automate our reporting, and it's essentially created a new job for somebody to not maybe do the earnings reports, but think about how we automate the reports, what's the information that's in there, how do we do quality assurance. It's a different skill set. Enter the job of the data journalist, which is a new skill set in our industry. It's somebody who has a bit of maybe a computer science background, maybe a journalism background, and is thinking about how to apply this to different topics that lend themselves to it, like sports scores, things like that, and that we can provide more content that's better and accurate, but you've got to manage essentially a system now instead of writing the reports. So we continue down that path. We've been delving into machine learning. I mean, this has been really exciting for me. And in this case, there's supervised machine learning and unsupervised. This was an unsupervised machine learning exercise where we were looking at gun violence in Chicago. It's a real example, and we were looking for trends in the data sets. And we had something really compelling pop out. An accidental shooting kills a child every other day in Chicago. That came out from our, from the machine, essentially. So this is a powerful use case for us. And again, it's not replacing the journalist. It's enabling the journalist to do better work, faster work. We have our own thoughts on, what the facts are on a particular topic, but if we can use machine learning to uncover some of these things in big data sets, it's just better for the public, better information, and we just got to get past that. It's journalists working with machines, that it's okay, but it's how we use the data. Text-to-speech. More on the artificial intelligence front. These are really cool projects, right? Working with Amazon and Google on what we call conversational interfaces. You've all used them probably in this room. It's only going to get more pervasive. It's going to be the car, the refrigerator. There's lots and lots of issues around this. We expect a great deal of news consumption to be delivered through smart devices of all kinds. This is accomplished through basic text-to-speech. The synthetic voice sounds cool, but as you can see, it's very quickly changing on ways you can put your own voice in. There's different kinds of voices. So it's happening very quickly. The big challenge for us that will surprise you a little bit, all this is happening, but our big challenge is data architecture. And you think about the AP, you might be thinking about data structures and data architecture. But I started my career as a computer programmer, so I get this, and we need to have all of our massive content sets structured for conversational interfaces, and believe it or not, it's really difficult. Our data needs to train artificial intelligence. Many companies are using AI's historic data set to train their artificial intelligence systems. So this is a big area for us. And at the bottom layer, the layer that you don't see under the hood, it's the data architecture that is going to make news and information be a little bit more accessible, working in partnership with all these companies. This is a big deal. It's the future of the news industry in terms of having machine-readable metadata, being able to distribute all this content all over the world and it flow into conversational interfaces, content management system, and it's thinking about data not in a scary way, but data as an enabler. Data that is providing relevant content that's relative to different demographics, greater automation, speed, more personalization. It's a big deal for us. Leads us to business intelligence and visualizations. There's been some incredible progress here in visualizations in the news industry, and there's so much further that we have to go. It used to take a long time to do a data visualization, and the technology is getting better for us. We build a lot of data visualizations for customers. This is one example of business intelligence for us. I don't know if everybody's aware, but we deploy 5,000 to 6,000 people around election time, and we call the national election in every state, in every county. We cover about 7,000 races. This creates an enormous amount of data just on elections. And I'm using elections as an example just because it's a good use case. Nobody else does this. Nobody else does this as fast as we do it. The U.S. government doesn't do it, and we're the only organization that delivers the deepest data set on election night and the deepest historical archive. We have 2 really sophisticated statistical analysis programs that basically this data is loaded in every minute of the day during an election, and we use standard deviations. We use a number of statistical components to call an election when the trailing candidate can no longer achieve getting ahead of the leading candidate. Sounds pretty simple. Tons of data, tons of statistics. This has been a great project for us. It's really the first time we've been able to offer the market a really good visualization of the data. It's been a long time coming, but this is like core to our innovation strategy, is to create more of this from the data that we're capturing. This is another new area that's really important to the news industry. We're working on some smart systems. These are really cool. This is about tagging assets as they come in a better way. So this technology is really helping editors and reporters quickly classify and organize content and speed up the editing process. In some cases, we can use vision systems for investigative journalism. And here's a good example from some of our work with Google. You can input an image, and it automatically generates text that describes the photo. And this is getting more accurate, and it's only going to get more accurate as we keep innovating on it and iterating through it. But in this example, you have a protest in Latin America, and the algorithm quickly tells us there was a crowd, there was people, it's a protest, they're marching. This is also good technology for pattern recognition and investigations around the world. So this is another technology that's changing how we work today. Robotics, drones, you've probably seen some of the drone footage of natural disasters. We've made investments, heavy investments in robotics. We can't take this one for granted. I've only got one slide on it, but it's really important. It's changing how we cover stories. It's changing how we think about a story. Last night, we had 3 of our journalists who were in the video who stayed in Mariupol, lost their homes, kept reporting. A pretty moving award ceremony at AP last night. But you think about using robotics in a war zone to capture the story and not put the journalists in danger. So we're using robots for that. We're using drone footage. We're using robotic cameras on basketball courts, under the water. It's a new skill set. It's a different way to shoot. What angle do we want to get? What kind of data are we going to capture and store? This is like next level data that we're getting. But I think this is helping us think about how to cover stories in different ways. So I'm excited about the robotics program because obviously that's where my engineering and journalism connect, but it's changing how the news industry thinks. Again, all this is about bringing a new skill set, an innovative type skill set into the media industry. We started using the word data journalist, but we're now using the word computational journalist, quantitative journalist, and this is an in-demand skill set. We can't staff it fast enough. This is somebody who maybe has a computer science degree from Stevens. Maybe they worked at the Stute, and they're interested in journalism and likes to see the marriage of those two things together. But we don't have enough people to service the demand in the industry, and it's a really new skill set, and I think has just already added a ton of value. My favorite slide, that's my son. He just turned 11, and he's cute, and he's going to play for the Yankees one day. Stating that now. He's very happy, right? He doesn't look very threatening, does he? This little man has the power to create anything he wants. And if any of you have ever been to the National Association of Broadcaster Conference in Las Vegas, about 10 years ago, massive technology, huge, very expensive. This guy's not using that technology to create anything. Today, all of that tech is the size of a laptop. You can create anything you want in your room, anywhere around the planet. And this is creating a massive issue for us. That's what's real, what's fake. I don't even think these numbers really capture the challenge that we have. 3.2 billion images created a day and more. There's probably nearly 1 billion hours of video shared daily. How on earth do we know what's real and what's not? Let's create another new capability in the back office at news organizations. Enter social news gathering. This is a skill set. This is a capability. We are only at the very beginning stages of this right now. It's a business process. It's a mixture of technology and techniques for verifying content. There's so much stuff that we get every day that's not real. We can't even process it all. But if you think about it, when you hear about a video that was uploaded and is all over the news, we actually have an important process around this. It starts with determining if the social media account was even a real person. And that's really hard to do, believe it or not. The next thing is, did somebody take your phone? Did you film the video, or did you film it? Who was the actual content creator, and do they have rights in that area of the world? Does your company own the phone, or do you own the phone? We found that in some cases, the company has 50% rights to your image. So are you using a Stevens phone, or are you using an AP phone, or is it your own phone? Some other questions around social news gathering are we in the right geography? Can we look behind the video or the image? What are the flags in the background? What are the uniforms? What are the road signs? What are the license plates? Are the shop names correct? What's that language in the background? Is that language supposed to be in that area? What's the weather? What was the weather on that day? We get stuff that's a sunny day and it was raining. What season is it? We have a technique called a sun shadow analysis. Are the shadows of the people correct? I mean, this is all obvious stuff, but when you apply it to a business process, you start to find that if you can't verify all those points, we throw it out. Can't verify it. We don't know if it's true or not. Also, the people doing social news gathering are getting exposed to lots of terrible events during the day. So there's a human issue of visually seeing all that content and what it does to somebody on the journalism side. So we need to be wary of that. And lastly, we have to get the permission. Does somebody want to sell us that content? They have to sign a piece of paper on it. This is a real thing. It's not going anywhere. It's a monumental task, and what it's done for news organizations is people trust your brand. And so if you're going to take a piece of user-generated content that was on Instagram and you're going to send it out to 15,000 customers worldwide, you better be sure that it's a real piece of content and it was not doctored by a 10-year-old sitting in his bedroom on a laptop. And this really speaks to the digital publishing cycle. The previous state, you saw a story in nightly news, may have read something in the newspaper, that has quickly transitioned. So that previous state's gone. We're in the current state. The current state is very human-centered, and it's very difficult to manage. The digital publishing cycle has 7, 8, 9, 10 updates per story. It keeps going. It goes on and on and on, and people want to know about the developing story. So this has been a big issue overall, is how do you manage the digital publishing cycle? How much time do you spend on it? Do you have the right data? How much UGC is in there? I don't know what the future state is. It might be a mixture of an initial filing of a story, followed by artificial intelligence, followed by more humans. But this area is still sort of gray for us. But right now, we're in the thick of the current state, which is a really lengthy publishing cycle that uses a lot of time and resources. There's some other great opportunities for news in the streaming area. We look for opportunities right now in short-form documentaries. What's really interesting is we did an analysis of a lot of the major streaming platforms, and news and documentary programming makes up like 20% of these streaming platforms. It's a bit of a new skill set. It's about thinking about telling stories in a much shorter form, mini docs we call them, but how do we get news and information on these platforms that's not entertainment, that is interesting, and get people to watch them and understand how this audience is reacting. We launched Campus Insights a little while ago because I felt the world needed to hear more from the academic community. You want more experts speaking out and figuring out how do you translate that 50-page white paper into a minute in a mass communication effort. And it's not to dilute all that research, but we have a powerful platform that's delivered to newsrooms around the world. So how do we get at the public's desire for a more diverse set of experts around the world, and how do we train those experts to deliver content that's informative, it's engaging, and starts to really spread their research around the world in a positive way. We're really excited about this. These are two Stevens professors that have been participating in the program, and we see Stevens videos downloaded around the world. So I think it's working, and I think it's contributing to putting more experts into the news business. The other thing that's getting really complicated really quick are news partnerships. This is tough for the news industry because news organizations like to stay independent. Editorial independence, it's key, right? It's why people trust the AP, because we're not owned by anybody, we are independent. And a few years ago, I went to Howard Hughes Medical in Maryland, and I met with the chief scientist, and I didn't know that part of the mission of the Howard Hughes Medical Institute was to inform the world. And that's our mission, is to inform the world. And their problem, though, is nobody was hearing about the great strides in research in Alzheimer's and cancer. So we did an interesting deal where at the bottom of every story, AP Stories, it says this was written in collaboration with Associated Press and Howard Hughes Medical Institute. Sounds like a simple thing, right? But very difficult when you're trying to sort of own your creation of news and information. Problem is there's lots of great information that is held up in a lot of foundations and a lot of research institutions. This business started off at $3 or $4 million, and it's now about 33 million actually as of this month. So we've brought philanthropic funding into the AP, where we still own the independent writing of all of these stories, but scientists, academics are participating in the fact piece of that. It's created a lot of jobs for us, and there's nothing more fulfilling than starting a program that has created 77 jobs for people at the company. I don't know what comes next in Web3, but the tech disruption is coming again for us. I'm optimistic about all of this because I think it brings better asset tracking, better rights management for intellectual property producers, which is what we are. I think the blockchain will help. We just have to figure out how to use it and tag assets to it so we know that they're verified assets and they're not fake. The metaverse, probably going to put another layer over the internet. It already has. If you look at some of the 3D technology that's out there, metaverse is going to change us overnight because people are starting to use it. So we really have to think about the technology structure that we need to exist in this new Web 3.0. There's a lot of fear and trust in the media industry. We've got lots of issues. And the best we can do is tell the best story, use the best data, back it up, use the best sources, but we've got to earn our trust every single day with every single story, and we all know it. I get to manage a lot of transformation projects at the AP. This has been really exciting. But while we might be moving fast, we got 15,000 newsrooms that are all moving at different paces. So we've got to figure out how do we roll out some of this new technology that is ubiquitous and gets into all of these newsrooms, and at the same time, they can still use it. So adoption has been slow. There's been lots of really cool experiments going on. Newsrooms have been economically stressed, so we're trying to figure out how do we help them? How do we help them with these transitions to new technology? And there's lots of solutions. I mean, there's tons of startups in this area. And part of our challenge, and my challenge, is which ones do we bet on? What technologies are coming that we think are transformative, are innovative, help us, we can scale on a global level, and that we can train everybody to use. I'm optimistic, I'll say it again. I think a better tomorrow is coming. And I think because we're all thinking globally now, all of our projects, from dealing with a U.S. customer, we're thinking about everything we do as large-scale processing production. How do we get this software into all these newsrooms? And it's a massive Six Sigma exercise. It's a continuous improvement exercise. These are words that the journalism side of the industry isn't familiar with, but this is what's going to get us there. Automation is going to help. It's going to help decrease errors. It's going to help automate things that journalists used to do that the public is okay with automating. And that's the important thing, is we've got to educate the public. We've got to educate newsrooms that we're only selecting the best right now in automation, things that really work and really free up resources. Choice and personalization are important. This continues to be a challenge, is how do you get our content to be personalized and show up on any number of 400 plus devices that are out there. Journalists have a new lens to view the world with robotics, automation, vision. They have the option for better storytelling. And ultimately, that's what we're trying to do, is create better stories, create better fact-based stories, better data sets, better insights. But it's a new frontier. I mean, we can use AI, but we have to tread carefully, because AI right now is only good as what you tell it. And it would be great if I could, there's a project going on right now in the news industry to scrape 10K reports and predict a failure or success of a company. That's tough. It sounds really easy to do, but do we want to be putting that out there and have the downfall of a company be on this kind of technology? So a lot of these things sound very simple, but when you start to apply them, you have to apply a certain amount of ethics to them on the kinds of things you think will actually be good for society. We've got to earn the public's trust every day, and so we think through these things thoughtfully. I think the thing about innovation is to remain teachable, be curious, be persistent. This is all part of the DNA right now at the AP. So thanks everybody for listening today. I hope that you took something away with this. I feel like I've just scratched the surface with all these projects in the news industry. And I hope you were a little surprised at some of the innovation going on behind the scenes, and that we do create great content, but there's a big piece on the back end that we need to continue to build out, and appreciate your time today. Thank you. Yeah, do we want to do a few questions? Sure. Yeah. Sure, go ahead.
So I'm thinking about what you talked about with artificial intelligence and its effect on journalism. I'm interested in your process of kind of evaluating these technologies. So for example, in NLP, you have GPT-3 and these very large language models that can actually generate text, but I'm pretty sure that journalists don't necessarily want it to be used to actually write the end stories, but they might be interested in using that tool for other kind of preliminary purposes before they do a story.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think in that case, anything that's a potential input to a story that could support better facts, in that case it could be an input. Our other question about how we engage in these new technologies, we try to establish some sort of operating relationship if it's with somebody who's developed something new and we want to partner with them, that we can apply to something that's actually going on in the operation. So we did that with a company, for example, Bamboozer, where you can edit and film on your phone and have that operating relationship so that we're sort of committed to testing out the technology. So I mean, not to oversimplify it, but we've got to experiment with all these things and figure out, can we scale it? Can we scale it across the organization? And then how do we, is it usable? Does it upset the digital publishing cycle in any way? Or is it a value-added step in the business process? In the case you just raised, I see that like as a value-added step for an investigative journalist or somebody trying to get a story out there and using that kind of technology to see, like, have I missed anything?
Do you have a security issue in the sense of fearing that your base of facts on a particular story may be hacked and therefore changed by someone else?
The short answer is yes. I think everybody has a security issue. We have a whole cybersecurity team at the AP that looks at locking down all of our content. We haven't had, we've had the typical issues that any organization has had with somebody trying to come through a firewall, but we haven't had any, deficiencies in accessing, our data. I think we worry about it every day. Our head of cyber worries about that every single day. And there's not enough we can do, and we haven't really found any sort of tech that solves the problem for us globally because we're all around the world. But I'm not so worried about our stories being hacked as much as the system coming down. For us, it's been more about the system being up than somebody actually getting to the getting to our actual data. The other thing that happens all the time is people will take our content and do something else with it, create a video that isn't real. And that's just theft of intellectual property, and it's something we have to manage. A lot of this stuff we don't catch, but that's part of the big problem that's going on right now with fake news in general. You can grab any video off the internet and edit it. So if we can catch people, great. If we can't, we can't.
Thank you so much for your talk. It's never been more important than now, the issues that you're discussing in terms of fake news and all that. But I'd like to ask a biographical question because I was very fascinated by the fact that you studied literature and English.
Oh.
And I teach a course in academic writing and speaking here, so I'm more on the humanities side. And if you notice, the Stevens logo is inspired by humanity, powered by technology.
Right.
So how did that all work out in your own biography in terms of your interest in literature, your knowledge of the humanities, in terms of your ability to tell a story and in your own life, and including your reading habits even now?
It's a good question. I'll talk about what I think for myself. I think the Stevens engineering discipline and the initial work I did as a computer programmer, and like you say, that background I have, sort of brought together business, technology, and creativity into, I like to think I have a unique view in the news industry because of my background. And I like that view because I engage in all of those areas equally, and I have a say in the newsroom, I have a say in product development, and also get to run some really cool experiments with new technology. So I think those disciplines are really important because in an industry that is both tech-driven heavily and creative, it's important to understand both sides of that. So I think in any industry, if you can sort of connect with people across the board, it just gives you a better perspective. I also feel like I have a sense of when things are going to work. It's not a sixth sense, it's born out of experience in all those areas, but I can kind of tell if something's going in the right direction. I think there's some in the back there.
Yeah, you cautioned about bias creeping into the AI. Could you elaborate on what exactly you're talking about in terms of what you fear and why it's so important there?
Yeah, I mean, you can do anything you want with data, right? I mean, there's lots of studies on taking data sets and telling stories in different ways. the most important thing we're finding in artificial intelligence is just the cleanliness of the data. So when we build a gun database, do we have all the sources? If we're going to tell a story about guns in America, do we have enough publicly available data that we feel we can tell the story accurately? We did the same thing with lead in the water, right? When that became a big issue a few years ago, everybody wanted to know, every state wanted to know, could we get a data set big enough to look at lead in the water? So getting clean data is like the #1 thing. If you don't have that foundational data, that's what I worry about. I worry about people doing experiments with little bits of data, and that little bit doesn't really, it gives you an output, but that output could have bias because you don't have enough data. And that's the challenge with these kinds of projects, is do I have enough data to be confident that I'm delivering the right message, telling the right story.
Well, thank you for a wonderful talk. But the question I have is, with all this technology, who makes the decision to put this information out to the world? I mean, is it a computer or is it a person?
It's a person at this point, and that is, that's the challenge. You've got humans interacting with some pretty sophisticated and complex systems. I take that back. Like the automated earnings reports, they're automated, but then somebody's looking and making the decision, like, I'm comfortable with this data set. So while we took humans out of that equation, they're still involved. And I think what's changed, as I said, the skill set's changing. So the oversight of the earnings reports, the oversight of the data, is it clean? Are we getting it in correctly? Is it timely? How much quality assurance does the human do before I release that data set? Humans are still very heavily involved, at least at the AP and all of these things. And I don't know that that changes anytime soon. Data sets that you can automate, we figure out what pieces of that can I automate, and then what ultimately am I still not comfortable yet automating. I mean, we're very conservative, don't get me wrong. Present a lot of cool stuff, but we're very conservative about, and I would be very conservative about releasing any solution out there. And the public should too. The public should be concerned about how we're using automation and artificial intelligence to tell news stories. Are we doing it for verification? Are we doing it to have better sources? Or are we having a robot write the story? There's no robots really writing stories at this point for us, other than maybe like reports and things like that, sports scores too, that kind of lend themselves to it.
Thanks for a really good presentation. My question is, do you think there's space for fake images in journalism? And I ask this because a lot of the discourse is about how fake pictures are being used for deception. But at the same time, I read these really nice stories with vivid descriptions, but there was just no one there to capture a picture. And I see an opportunity to use these technologies to create images for these sort of situations. So what are your thoughts on this? Thanks.
That's a really good question. I mean, my initial reaction is it's okay to create artwork. Either, you think about the New Yorker having, a picture in it. That's sort of more artwork or a caricature or something like that. It depends what the use is, right? If you're telling a story about something and you want to take a bunch of photos and mash something together to make a point about something, but you're not saying that that is actually news, I mean, that's fine. Again, it's all about the intent. If you're trying to tell somebody that here's a picture and this really happened on Monday, well then that's a bad actor, right? If you're using it to sort of enhance something and the caption says, this is artwork that was created by Michael, fine. I think folks would be okay with that. It's really, what we're really concerned about is somebody saying that video is real when it's not, or that news is real and it's not. The other concern is rights. If you're going to mash together 3 images and you're going to sell it, you better have the rights to all those images. That's another big issue for us. But I think there's probably a place for that, and that's a good question. NFTs too. I mean, NFTs have been, it's artwork. So there's been a lot of criticism of NFTs, but society's placing a value on buying digital imagery that is made by an artist. We have created some of those with artists, with orchestras, so we are starting to get into that business. It's really interesting, but it's more about creating things that exist in the metaverse that somebody places value on, that you might want to have up on your wall, because it's the only artistic rendering of some event that happened. We'd rather be in that space to sort of help guide it and make sure people aren't doing bad things with NFTs, but I mean, there's lots of NFT content being created.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you so much for such a fantastic talk. I have a question about the personalized news. We all know the commercial industries have figured it out. If you do a Google of laptop computer, for the next 3 months, every time you turn up Google on, it's laptop computer.
Yeah.
Now, if we start doing news in such a fashion, are we worried that this personalized news will tend to be to the person's interest and taste, and people just become more and more confined into their own echo chamber, will never be opened up to other issues, and you will further polarize our society? That was just something I thought might be of a concern. I want to hear your thoughts on that.
I think it's definitely a concern. I think the train has definitely left the station on the idea that you might be interested in stories about energy in your news feed, right? And you only want stories delivered to you about energy. Maybe you work in the energy sector, and that's what you're interested in. Maybe you're interested in marathons. You like energy, and you like marathons, and you like baseball, let's say, right? And so those are the 3 things you really want to know about. I don't see how we stop that. People want personalization. It makes sense, especially if you work for a company or an industry. The best thing we can do is write the best stories. We work with all of these content creators around the world. We don't write opinion at the AP. So I think the best thing we can do is deliver what we are delivering to our customers, and help them understand how to write in a way that's not polarizing. Somewhat of an industry influencer answer, but I don't know that we're going to stop personalization.
Michael, thank you again. So if you would please come here. This was an incredibly well-delivered and informative presentation. As you could see from the questions in the audience, there's a lot of interest in this topic. And Provost Q, I have a suggestion for the concern that you raised. I think this idea of personalized news is a great idea, but if I were the king, I would identify these echo chambers, and I would deliver exactly the opposite type of news to each echo chamber. With that, I have an important announcement to make. I'm pleased to confer the 7th President's Medal upon Mr. Michael Fabiano. The President's Medal, which, by the way, is here. The President's Medal is awarded to individuals who have had a significant impact on society by virtue of their science and technology-focused research and development activities and contributions, their entrepreneurial accomplishments, their leadership in business education or the public sector, their artistic or cultural contributions, or their success in elucidating critical topics for the greater public. Today, I bestow this honor upon Mr. Fabiano for his leadership and significant contributions to the news industry. And with your permission, I'm going to open this up This is the beautiful looking President's Medal. And if you don't mind, I will put it around your neck without doing much harm. Congratulations one more time. Thank you, Michael. As further tribute to Mr. Fabiano's influence, a deserving and talented incoming first-year student will be selected to receive a scholarship named in your honor next fall. So there will be a Michael Fabiano Scholar next year joining Stevens Institute of Technology. So let me conclude by thanking you once again, by thanking the audience for being here. It gives me enormous pleasure to have all of you here after a long time and to see all of you in 3 dimensions. Thank you once again for sharing your insight, Michael. And at this point, I'd like to invite you and the audience to join me upstairs in the gallery room for a brief reception. Thank you again.